In this video, I'm going to show you how to build an Excel Tools add-in. I'm going to walk you through programming in VBA to automate a bunch of functions and save you a lot of time when you're working within Excel. So the first thing I'm going to do to create that add-in is create the add-ins file. And so I'm going to just create a blank workbook, go to Save As, choose a location because it's going to default to a location if I choose XLAM, which is the modern add-in format. So I'm just going to call it tools.xlam. And by default, it's going to put it in your app data roaming folder in add-ins. You could put this anywhere, but if you're just going to keep it on this computer, it's good to just keep it in this app data folder. But you could put it in your documents if you want to use it on multiple computers and have it sync between them if you're using like a cloud-based service. But for this, I'm just going to click Save. Now that I saved that file, it's created the XLAM file in that folder. However, the file is not installed and not open, and you'll see it still says book 1 up here. So this is a blank regular workbook, and if I go to the developer tab and into Visual Basic, the only thing that's open is that book 1. The tools is not open. So what I need to do is I need to go to File, Options, add-ins, and then Excel add-ins. And then I go check that box for tools. Now, since I stored it in the app data folder, it shows up here in this list. If you stored it somewhere else, you got to go to browse and find the XLAM file. But for me, I'm just going to click tools and then click OK. Now, when I go into the Visual Basic Explorer, I have the blank workbook that was left open, but then I have my tools. And this is where I'm going to actually install all my macros. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert 2 modules. And the first module I call admin module. So this is where I'm going to store some reusable code, the code that the macros are actually going to call, but say 5 macros may call the same procedure. That's what I'm going to store those in the admin module. Then I'm going to create another module, and I'm going to call this one macro module. And so this is where I'm actually going to store the macros that are going to be called by the quick access toolbar. So in the admin module, I'm just going to paste in a bunch of reusable code that I already have. So I have a toggle add-in procedure. This enables as an add-in because you won't see these sheets as long as it's considered an add-in, but you can turn the add-in function off and then you'll actually see the sheets that are associated with it. And you can put references there, you can put everything, but you always need to turn the add-in back on before you save it, so Excel will treat it as an add-in. Then I have a sheet exist, delete sheet, add sheet, just functions to verify some sheet information. I have a get open file name function. This one gets pulls open a file dialog so the user can select a file. The save as file dialog, this one is to get the save as side of things. This one's to open, so this one's to save. And one thing about the save as files, it can only go by the index of the extension. So these indexes may change between different versions of Excel. XLSX is currently index 1 on Office 365, and XLSM is 2, and so forth there. So say you're one of us that lives in Excel every day, and you probably run into this many times, is where you have these sheets that have formulas on them. And so like in this example, these 2 formulas extract the first name and last name from this column right here. Well, occasionally, if you delete this column, you'll get reference errors and things like that. So a lot of times you'll just want to copy the data and then paste the values right over top of it. And then you can do whatever you want to column A. Well, let's write a macro to do that really quick every time so you don't have to right click, copy, and paste 1, 2, 3 every single time. So I'm going to go back into my macro module. So I'm going to do sub paste selection as values, hit enter, and it'll automatically put that in sub in there. And then it's a fairly simple macro. All you have to do is say selection.copy, then selection.paste special, and then I'm going to say paste equals Excel paste values. Then I'm going to turn off the little marquee that goes around it, the dotted lines that spin around it, by saying application.cut copy mode equals false. So that'll turn off the little squares that walk around it. So just to show you how that works, I'm going to go back in here. So say I still have my formulas here. I select them all. I just quickly run this with F5, and you didn't even see it, but now these are pasted as values. So for the next function that's probably common for heavy users in Excel is that you might come and add a bunch of sheets all the time, and then, oh, you don't need that sheet anymore. So you got to right click it, delete it, and then confirm you delete it. And so that can be a lot of clicks that can be easily automated. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, hit back to my macro module, and I'm going to call it delete active sheet. And this one's a very simple one. I'm going to call the admin module delete sheet, and I'm just going to give it the sheet name, whatever one I'm currently on. And be careful with this because you don't want to just delete any sheet. So this one is a more pro module. You got to know you're ready to delete this sheet. But what that does is I can go to the definition of it to see. And so it's going to call this delete sheet by the sheet name, and it's going to say, if the sheet exists, I'm going to record what the alerts are. The alerts are that confirmation that says, are you sure you want to delete this? So I'm just going to record what the current setting is. Then I'm going to turn them off. Then I'm going to delete the sheet. Then I'm going to turn the alerts setting back to what it was originally. So if you turn it off on your own all the time, it's going to keep it off. If you keep it on by default, which is what Excel has, it'll just turn it back to whatever it was to begin with. So that is the delete active sheet. And so to give you an example of that, I'm on sheet 3. Now say I add even sheet 5 here. I just come over here, I run that macro, delete sheet 5, no questions asked. So the next macro that I'm going to do is, if you are constantly in Excel, you probably get this a lot, where you'll have a column that are truncated, or you maybe see the first few, but then you can't see us, and or maybe a table that you just opened, or a CSV file, and you can't see all the data. Well, if you're normally, you would just select all cells and then double click a column. Now all of it can be seen, and you do the same for rows just to make sure everything can be seen. Well, we can automate that. So I'm just going to turn it back to what it was. So before everything was there. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say sub Autofit columns and rows. And this one's pretty simple. It's just cells.entire column.autofit. And then cells.entire row.autofit. Oops, not fill. And now, whenever you get these kind of files that open and everything is truncated just because tables work that way, you just hit run this macro, everything automatically gets resized for you. The next macro I'm going to write is going to be for when you are sending an Excel workbook to somebody else. This helps that. And so you never want to send an Excel workbook where the cursor is in random places, where you're scrolled down and you're not in the first cell. So like when somebody opens it, they're not going to initially know to scroll all the way back up to the top and stuff. So what you're going to want to do is go through every sheet and put the cursor to cell A1. So to do that, I call this one Finalize Workbook. And so to do that, I'm going to just create an object of a sheet, or worksheet. And then I'm going to say for I equals sheets.count to 1, step -1, Next, create the for loop. And so what this is do, sheets.count is going to count how many sheets there are in the workbook. So it's going to start. So for this one, it has probably 6 sheets, 7 sheets. So it's going to start at 7, work its way down to 1 by incrementing -1 at a time. And I do this because I start at the far right and work my way left. And so I'm going to set my object variable to sheets, and I'm using the index value here. So I'm going to set it to the index of I, which gets incremented. And I'm going to say if the sheet is visible, I'm going to select it, because you got to make sure it's visible, because if you try to select a sheet that's hidden, you'll get a debug error. So I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to on that sheet, I'm going to select A1. And then, so when I run this, it'll actually go through everyone from right to left. It'll end on the final sheet, or on the farthest left sheet, and it'll put the cursor in cell A1. So note here, like the cell is in A13 on this one. It's in D51 here. So when I run this, it's going to put the cursor in cell A1 on every single tab. Now this workbook is ready to go, and you can send it off to whoever's needing it. For the next macro in this tools add-in, it's going to be useful for deleting all of the information on a sheet without deleting the sheet. So you could use the delete active sheet and create a new sheet, but say you have set up this sheet with the correct page layout, with the margins in the correct spot to repeat headers and things like that. So you don't want to necessarily delete that, but you do want to delete all the data on there. And if you have something filtered, when you come up here and say delete, all that's going to do is unhide everything. It's going to delete the stuff that was visible, but then you'll still remain, and you'll have to do this again. You have to do that twice. Well, let's write a macro that does it all at once. So I'm going to say sub delete cells. I'm going to create my sheet object, and I'm going to set the sheet object to the active sheet. And from here, I'm going to say object sheet auto filter mode equals false. What that'll do is it'll turn off and clear any filters that are on the workbook. And then I'm going to say sheet.cells.delete. And then I'm going to return the cursor to cell A1, because all the information is deleted, so that sheet will be completely blank. So you want to be on cell A1. So to show you how this works, I run the add-in. Everything is deleted. Sheet's still there. Any page layouts and things like that will still be there. And there you have it, a clean sheet. So for the next macro, this one's going to be to export the current sheet to a PDF. So when you get that nice dashboard ready, or the printed report ready to send out, rather than print it out to paper, and you can go to File and then Export. And ever since Excel, I believe 2013, there's a Create PDF/XPS document option where you can create this. It'll ask you where do you want to save it and things like that, and you can publish it. And so this macro will automate those steps. So this one is going to be a simple export sheet to PDF. And so for this, it's going to call the admin module to get that save as file name. So that's going to open that file dialog. It's going to pass a variable to it, so it'll get the name that you select. It's going to default it to an active sheet name. So whatever sheet you're on, it'll default it to that name, and it's going to try to filter it to the index of PDFs. And if you say cancel, it'll exit out of the sub. So, and then it uses the active sheet export as fixed format, which is a function within the Excel VBA module. And then I'm going to say it's type PDF. File name is the file name that you select through the get save as file name. Quality standard, include document properties, include print areas, false, and open after publish, true. So if you just want it to save it by default and not open it, you can just change that to false. You can change all the different parameters that you want, but these are the standard ones that I choose, and in fact, if you want to see them, if you go to create the document, you can see the options here. All the options that are right here are available to set in the macro in the VBA here. So just to run this one, I'm going to say F5, and now it's defaults to dashboard.pdf, and I can just save this on the desktop. I'm going to say save, and since it's set to open after publish, it'll open the PDF. And so this is what you'll get. So this button will quickly just create that PDF for you. So this was importing an active sheet. Well, what if you want to export the entire workbook as PDF? Well, that's very similar. So instead of export sheet, I'm going to call this one export workbook. And the only change I have to make to this is instead of active sheet, I change this to active workbook. And where I set a default name, I'm actually going to use the default name as the workbook's name here. And so now when I run this, it's going to give me the default name as active, the workbook name. I click save, and I still have it opening after publishing. So when I click this, it's going to take a while because it's doing all the tabs. And there you have it. So there's the dashboard. If I keep scrolling, I'll see the pivot tables, and it literally has, and I didn't set page layouts or on any of those other tabs, so a lot of them are bleeding onto other pages, but all the data is there, and it exported the entire workbook to PDF. And one thing to note that it uses the Excel export to PDF function from Microsoft. It does not use Adobe or any other third-party extension that you have. And like I said, as long as Excel 2013 or later, that is built into it. And so you can export that entire workbook in one quick button. The last macro in this tools add-in is going to help you upgrade all of your old legacy files. So if you have some old XLS files or just some workbooks that are just acting funky, and it could be that there's some issue just embedded in the data of the file. And sometimes the best way to actually fix that is just to start with a brand new file and copy all your data over. Now you can go to, for old XLS files, you can go to File, Save As, and then change the drop down to XLSX. But all of your legacy functions and some of those things that are kind of holding you back on your old file, those are still going to linger there, and they may not, you might not be able to see them, but you may notice a lot of issues with the file. So the best option when you're doing a conversion is to actually just copy all the data to a new workbook, because those new workbooks are going to be clean, no remnants from old systems and things like that. So for that, I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to paste in the macro. So what it'll do is it'll record which workbook you're trying to convert, create a new workbook, and then just go through each of the sheets, and it will copy all the data on them. And the shapes have to be copied separate, and it'll even pull in all the page setup, the headers, the footers, and things like that. And then at the end, it'll actually rename your old workbook old and put your new workbook as the new XLS format. Now, unfortunately, you can't pull macros in, so this is just going to be for XLSX files. If you have an old XLS with macros, you do have to copy those manually. There's no way to programmatically get those, but you can at least get all of your tabs into a brand new workbook that is not going to be hunkered down with old legacy functions. All right, so I'm going to run this. And so it's going to go through, as you can see, it's just going through every one of the sheets. And if it's hidden in the old workbook, it's going to be hidden in the new workbook. And now that it's done, I'll see now I have this file. That's an XLSX file. And if I go into File Explorer, you'll see that it renamed the old one, and now I have a brand new one in the current format. So this is a much better way to upgrade your files rather than just file save as, because if you do file save as, you're just going to have a lot of issues. The old issues will probably still show up. So always create new workbooks. Now that you have all the macros in here, now you got to make them accessible. So first thing I'm going to do is save this. And when you're in the VBA, Visual Basic Explorer, you'll see all the different workbooks that you have open. And if you select it, it'll be the one that shows up here. And if you're selected on a different one and you click save, it'll try to save this workbook. So always make sure if you're working on the add-in to be selected on that add-in and that your add-in is the one that's selected up there. So when I click save, it'll click save. Now this is like an unopened or unsaved workbook. If I click save on that, it's going to come over and ask me, what do you want to save this file? Well, so now that I've saved it, so now I'm going to make these macros accessible. So I'm going to come over to my Excel file and I'm just going to make it bigger. And here is where I can add it. Now, you can add all the different standard buttons that Microsoft provides, but to get to those add-in macros, you're going to go to More Commands, Popular Commands, Macros. And so these are all the macros that we just added. And I'm just going to add them all. Just keep clicking that button until it adds them all. I don't need the add-in one because I'm not going to need that one on a regular basis. I can go into Visual Basic Explorer to get that one. So, and now if you just click OK right here, all your buttons are going to be here, but they're going to have some ugly icons. So let's make those icons more readable. So for auto fit columns and rows, I'm just going to see that. And so choose a good icon. I like the eyeball because the whole point is to be able to see all of your data. Create new workbook. That one can be pretty much anything, but I would just use kind of a generic, kind of a new button. Delete active sheet. So I'm going to delete the sheet that I'm on. So I'm just going to choose something with a red X. Delete cells. Click modify. That one, I'll just use the whole red X because that one's a very dangerous one. So because once you run a macro, you can't get it back. So always be sure that you're wanting to do that. And so a big red X will tell you you're going to delete all the cells. Export sheet to PDF. This one, I'm going to select anything that kind of looks like a report. I'll select that one. Export an entire workbook to PDF. See if there's anything that kind of looks like a book. That'll be good enough. Finalize workbook. So this is the one that'll put the cursor in cell A1. I'll put that as a smiley face because, hey, you're happy the workbook is complete. I'm about to send it off. And then paste selection as values. Let's see, do they have something that's like a 1, 2, 3? No, but I'll use this ABC. But you can use any icons that you like. So I'm just going to click OK. And so now you can go quickly see all the different, test them out. And so like I'm on data 2. I delete that. Now data 2 is gone. Didn't ask me, didn't bother me. Now for this one, I can show cells. If I have a formula here, let's just say equals that left, just quick. And so I have formulas here. Say I don't want formulas there anymore. I click the paste values. Values is there. Finalize the workbook. Make sure cells every there. And let's just see. So that's how you do them. That's how you get all of your macros. And now they're all quickly there. So when you're at work, you can have them all and save yourself a lot of time and a lot of clicks when you're living in Excel every day. So that's the tools add-in. If you like this video, please like and share it. And if you have some macros of your own, please put them in the comments. I'd love to see what y'all do. And I lived in Excel for the longest time and I still do. And there's always things that I can learn, and I'm happy to learn everything. And if you have different functions that you do on a regular basis and you think it could be automated, let me know. I could probably help you out with that.